Hello hockey fans, and welcome back to another video. When you picture a goalie in the National Hockey League today, the two things that immediately come to mind are the giant pads strapped to their legs and the hefty masks covering their faces. Thanks to the continued technological advances in goaltending equipment, netminders across the league will now spend considerable time designing an intricate, highly detailed mask every season that best illustrates them as a person and as a hockey player. These colourful cages weren't always the norm though, as many of the early masks used in the 1960s, yeah, it took 50 years for goalies to start wearing face protection, were much more basic and far more terrifying. If you go back and watch any game footage from the 60s or 70s, the players in the crease look more like Jason Voorhees than they do an NHL goalie. I mean, some of those masks are pure nightmare fuel. However, one netminder decided to continue the traditions of those that came before him and reject this new craze longer than anyone else. This is the story of Andy Brown, the last maskless goalie in NHL history. Before we begin, I just want to mention that over 80% of you who watched my videos last month did not subscribe to my channel, so if you do enjoy this video and you want to see more like it in the future, consider hitting that subscribe button. It would really help me out a lot, folks. But anyways, on with the video. In order to tell this barefaced tale, allow me to take you back to June 7th, 1971. The National Hockey League were holding an interleague draft, which allowed NHL teams to select players who were too old for the amateur draft from independent, lower-tier leagues such as the AHL and the WHL to join their respective franchises. During this event, 27-year-old goaltender Andy Brown, who was considered one of the best netminders in the AHL at the time, and who had spent the past 6 seasons toiling away in the minors, predominantly with the Baltimore Clippers, was selected by the Detroit Red Wings. Brown would then join Detroit's organisation for the 71-72 season, and spend the first half of the year split between the Wings affiliates in the AHL and the Central Professional Hockey League, until February 20th, 1972, when he was called up to Detroit's roster in order to suit up in his NHL debut against the New York Rangers. Though he would give up 4 goals on 43 shots and the Red Wings would lose the game 4-1, Brown would replace Joe Daly as the team's backup netminder for the rest of the season, and post a 4-5-1 record, a 3.98 goals against average, and a .884 save percentage in 10 games. Though his rookie numbers in the NHL left a lot to be desired, Brown's playing style was also considered pretty traditional by his contemporaries around the league. During the 60s and early 70s, goalies had begun to wear masks during games in order to protect themselves and lower their risk of injury, an idea that was first ignited by Jacques Plante donning a mask in 1959. However, Brown had no interest whatsoever in wearing a mask, so he would take to the ice in the NHL without any protection on his face over a decade after the first mask had been worn. Brown's commitment to staying maskless was especially crazy considering the era in which he joined the league. With curved sticks becoming more and more common, and with skaters putting their own spin on the Bobby Hull slapshot, players were now able to elevate the puck higher than they had ever been before, and were shooting it much harder too. Brown's complete lack of interest in protecting his face earned him the nickname Fearless from his teammates, which seems pretty apt considering how little fear you must possess to stare directly at an 80 to 90 mile/an-hour slapshot without any facial protection. Either that or it's just sheer madness, I'll let you decide. Nevertheless, Brown would continue to play without a mask in the NHL for several years to come. After his late season stint with the Wings, Brown would begin the following 72-73 season with the Fort Worth Wings of the CHL, but after 22 games in the minors, he would be called back to Detroit to tend the crease against the Boston Bruins on December 21st, 1972. The Canadian netminder would stick with the Red Wings for 7 games, posting a 2-1-2 record, a 3.55 goals against average, and a .877 save percentage, before being traded to the Pittsburgh Penguins on February 25th, 1973, in exchange for a 3rd-round draft pick. Brown would then spend the rest of the 72-73 season with the Penguins, but unfortunately he would play even worse than in Detroit, as he posted a 3-4-2 record, a 4.73 goals against average, and a .868 save percentage in just 9 games. Despite these pretty horrific numbers, Brown would somehow get the opportunity to play another season with Pittsburgh, and even ended up as the team's starting netminder for the upcoming season. How does that happen? Going into the 73-74 season, there were only 2 netminders left that were still playing without a mask: Andy Brown and 44-year-old Gump Worsley, a 22-year veteran of the league and 4-time Stanley Cup champion who had completely opposed the idea of using a mask, summing up his thoughts perfectly with his famous quote, "My face is my mask." However, on March 17, 1974, Worsley finally gave in, as he put on a mask for the final 6 games of the year in what would be his final NHL season with the Minnesota North Stars. This meant that from March 17th onwards, Andy Brown was officially the last player in NHL history to play without wearing a mask. Though he would become the sole maskless netminder in the league, Brown would fail to produce much success during the 73-74 season, as he posted a 13-16-3 record, a 3.54 goals against average, and a .881 save percentage in 36 games. Interestingly though, Brown also set another record that year too, as he racked up the most penalty minutes by a goaltender in one season with 60, a record that was then broken in 1980 by Jerry Cheevers with 62, and is currently held by Ron Hextall's 88-89 season, where he recorded 113 penalty minutes, almost double what Andy Brown got. On April 7th, 1974, Andy Brown suited up in the final game of the Penguins season, allowing 6 goals on 31 shots as the Penguins took a 6-3 loss to the Atlanta Flames. With Pittsburgh missing out on the playoffs, and with the franchise wanting to run with a goalie tandem of Jim Rutherford and Dennis Herron next season, Brown became the odd goalie out. In fact, Brown's loss against the Flames would end up being the final NHL game of his career. So not only did that early April loss mean that Brown finished his NHL career with a 22-26-9 record, a 3.80 career goals against average, and a .879 career save percentage in 62 total games, but it was also the last game ever played in NHL history where a goalie wasn't wearing a mask. Following the conclusion of his NHL career, Andy Brown would take his talents to the NHL's new rival, the World Hockey Association, where he continued to play without a mask on for several years. The Canadian netminder spent the final 3 seasons of his career backstopping the Indianapolis Racers, where he posted a not-so-impressive 25-50-3 record, a 3.94 goals against average, and a .878 save percentage in 86 games, before calling it a day at the conclusion of the 76-77 season at 33 years old. With his retirement in 1977, Andy Brown officially became the last netminder to ever play without a mask in professional hockey history, which is a pretty badass achievement to put on your resume if you ask me. Though his time in the NHL was relatively brief, and he was far from being a top goalie in the league, when Andy Brown stood between the pipes without a mask on during the early to mid-1970s, he not only earned his place in the hockey history books, but he also kept the old traditions of his playing position alive longer than anyone else in league history. Say what you want about his career or his mediocre numbers, but that record belongs to him and him alone, and no one will be able to take that away from him, not even Gump Worsley. He wasn't a Hall of Famer, he didn't have a long and successful NHL career, but Andy Brown sure was fearless. And that's the story of the last maskless goalie in NHL history. What do you guys think about Andy Brown's record or his career as a whole? Let me know in the comments below, I would love to hear what you guys think. But thank you very much for watching, guys, I hope you have enjoyed. Please feel free to like, subscribe, share, or watch some of my other videos. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye! A big thank you to Antti Hannanen, Chris Gadsby, Connor B, John Plomin, Jordan Whitehead, Paul Mallia, Roman from London, The Legacy and Worthless Pieces, as well as a huge thank you to Let's Talk Hockey for helping support this video via Patreon. If you too want to help support the channel a little bit further and get a shout out at the end of every future video, make sure you head over to patreon.com/oddmanrush and become a patron today.